This is the Ashish Sports and Political Podcast. Coming to you live from Hilliard, Ohio. I'm going to scrap the idea of making the show separate, two separate shows. It's time consuming. It's because there's so many things to talk about. To be focused on one particular thing it's a hassle, but it also takes away some of my interest in terms of talking about specific things because of the multitude of subjects and how interesting and fascinating politics has become. It's very difficult for me not to merge both subjects together. I love both subjects, but to kind of compartmentalize and think, get in a sports mode, and then take a break, and then get in a political mode is something that's very difficult. I will say this, though. The idea of outrage in American society is ridiculous. We get outraged over the stupidest things post 1960. What we as Americans have seen, and I've said this before, this is a very small negative, and it has nothing to do with the content of the actual movement. Obviously, the civil rights movement, obviously the suffrage movement, was justified in every single way possible. But one of the drawbacks to this, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't have happened, I'm not saying that it shouldn't have happened. Obviously, these societal changes should have occurred. Okay, let's be straight about that. I'm not some let's go back to 1950 guy. Alright, that's ridiculous. What I am saying is this. One of the drawbacks to a movement-based societal change type of country is that everyone, once they see effective change, looks at their own things and says, hey, maybe if I do this, I can achieve this as well. Now, obviously, again, I've said this multiple times, the suffrage movement, the civil rights movement for African Americans, both of those movements were justified. Obviously, it's great. While it's a black mark on our society that we allowed slavery and civil rights injustices widespread for nearly 200 years? 1776 to 1960, the abolition of slavery, the kind of, I guess, 1980, and I think this had a lot to do with the Jackson 5, Magic Johnson, Arsenio Hall. Once people figured out that African Americans were actually entertaining, and this is just a sub point here, they found out that, hey, maybe it's cool to be like these guys. And that's where the culture sort of shifted. The whole Magic Johnson to LA, Arsenio Hall, kind of like the black version of David Letterman. Obviously, incredibly entertaining. Even from a guy born in the 2000s, Arsenio Hall is fun to watch. Eddie Murphy, the evolution of rap music. Those are the types of things that I guess integrated in a sense, and this is in air quotes, integrated whites and blacks together culturally. They were integrated in schools. They were integrated as a society. They weren't integrated as a culture. And those things, especially in entertainment, sports is entertainment, music, show business, have contributed to the cultural harmony or relative cultural harmony that we have today. However, I will say this, the movements in America, they have tried to call themselves the 21st century's civil rights movement. The movement to allow gays to be married legally, or the movement for bathrooms, I guess, or the movement to end police brutality and mass incarceration. I've talked about this. Those are lies. I'm not going to get into that. But, again, people are trying to recreate something, understanding, okay, the sentiment behind it. And look, these things are working. This would have never worked 50 years ago. Even amongst, take away the mass incarceration and police brutality thing, even African Americans were very conservative when you talk about the social issues, because those are very much tied into the Christian faith. So what you have is a culture that celebrates, that has accepted progressive social cause. And in certain aspects, sure, that's fine. I don't care. It's great. Well, I guess I should say I do care. But the civil rights movement, or the suffragist movement, not only was it about equal rights, it was about individual freedom, participation in a democracy. This is just, I don't like the stigma around what I'm doing, and I'm ticked off, which gets me to my point. I should say yesterday, was Father's Day. Anyway, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, especially the ones serving in the military, serving in our law enforcement. Major props to you. But it was Father's Day yesterday. And Paul Ryan, I think, wished his dad a happy Father's Day. And John Legend on Twitter responds, essentially saying, well, look, it's not a happy Father's Day if we're keeping children captive and we're not allowing them to be with their parents, among other things. So no, it's not a happy Father's Day. You are just able to celebrate it because you're in a position of power. Seriously, bleep you, Legend wrote, retweeting Ryan's post Saturday in which he wished all the dads out there happy Father's Day. Reunite the families at the border, and we can talk about Father's Day. The tweet came a day after the Department of Homeland Security confirmed that at least 2,000 children had been separated from parents at the border as part of a new zero-tolerance policy on illegal border crossings. Okay. Ryan said last week that he believes Congress should resolve the issue as a part of immigration legislation. Quote, "We don't want kids to be separated from their parents." Obviously. Look, the issue here is not the issue here is not the law. Well, it is the law, but understand what I'm saying. It's not the law. The law has existed for 20 years. For 20 years, the law has existed. Let's stop acting, please. Let's stop acting like this hasn't been happening for 20 years. 1997 Flores Law. Do you want to know the deal here? Okay, so what happens when a child and a parent cross the country illegally, apply for asylum, the asylum hearing takes 20 days or more to complete. According to the Flores law, children can only be detained for 20 days. So after the 20-day period, they are separated from their parents. There is a simple, easy fix to this. Appropriate more funding to family unit detention centers. Overturn the Flores law or deport them as a family altogether back to their home country, and the job is done. Okay, the thing that's a big deal here is the at least 2,000 children had been separated from their parents. Do you realize? Okay, 2,000 children. Do you know how many illegal immigrants are in the United States today? 12 million. Okay? So that's not even 1% of that number. That's a 60th of 1% of that number. And then how many DACA kids are there in America? 1.8 million kids as a result of DACA are living in the United States. That's 1/9 of 1%, 2,000 is. So to seriously argue about this is ridiculous in terms of a numbers perspective. Now I understand the humane argument. Guess what I did? I laid out a reason a solution to this issue that can be bipartisan. The issue is that the Trump administration has enforced the law slightly more than those of other administrations. The other administrations have enforced the law. I mean, this is not a big deviation of policy. This is a continuation of policy, just stricter. The double standard is amazing, obviously, just to watch this unfold as if the world is going to end and that the United States, people are comparing this to the Nazis. The Nazis killed these people, you know? And guess what? Most cases that aren't asylum cases are resolved within days, if not a single day. There are 12 million illegals in the United States. To act like we are not being humane. We haven't deported all 12 million of these people. This is ridiculous. 2,000. Alright? And I understand the humane perspective. I'm going to say it again. There is an easy fix to this. But since everybody wants to blame it on the president, blame it on the president all you want. Blame it on Congress. Both sides. For not solving this, for not solving DACA, for not adding border security. This is ridiculous, man. You know, I'll get to a second part of this. So the average illegal immigrant family, the average salary, I guess, of an illegal immigrant is $36,000. The average salary of a United States citizen is 50 grand. Including welfare, I saw that the estimates for welfare range from $5,000 to $7,000 for an illegal immigrant family per year. This is absolutely ridiculous, people. The idea, okay, that illegal immigrants are just doing the jobs that no one else wants. You don't think that 12.8 million unemployed Americans wouldn't take 43 grand in benefits and salary? $41,000 to $43,000. This is ridiculous. And here's another thing. When they convert this to pesos, they get rich in Mexico. So they're actually living the life because, I mean not comparatively, but in terms of monetary value, if you were to translate it to Mexican pesos, they're like the 1% class. So the idea that Americans wouldn't do these same jobs, and by the way, the housing and the welfare, it's not as if you're taking away from housing businesses or housing or what I'm trying to say is it's public housing. It's government funded housing. It's what you call affordable housing. So you can change that into tax incentives for hiring American workers. And you can appeal to the American workers without actually spending more than you would like. See, the book on illegal immigration is that businesses do it because it's cheap labor. But if you turn the welfare into cash that the employees can receive, not only is it still cheap labor, it saves you, you're still only spending the same amount of money out of your pocket. The American citizen actually gets the benefits and the cash that he wants. So the cheap labor continues from a business perspective, but at the same time, the employee gets a good salary. You don't think Americans would want this? So that's my take. Secondly, why don't we try to fix the issues in Mexico so that we can end this once and for all? Look, the war on drugs has been terrible. I get it. But you have to continue to do it, as well as instituting in Mexico a rehab facility. The ability to rehab. The idea that punitive damages aren't enforced on those addicted to drugs and rather enforced on the serial dealers. That's the issue. Okay? And also, I'd like to say a couple things about trade. First of all, one of the reasons as to why the value of Mexican work, or the reason why the Mexican economy, like the issues with the Chinese, except, let's be real, the Chinese, Asians, have been proven to, and I'm not saying this is the case for all, but there's a reason why we see a lot of Orientals work in software compared to the Latinos. And that's twofold. Marginal intelligence differences. I think that's clearly indicated by studies. Marginal. But secondly, the opportunity. The idea that the marginal intelligence differences can be used to make something greater than just the basic, oh, I'm going to manufacture things. And I'm not trying to demean the work. I'm just saying, if everyone in your economy is making $30,000, obviously something is wrong. So, rather than just creative products, creative ideas, kind of not telling the corporations in the U.S. to outsource, but look, we'll give you a tax benefit if you teach these guys how to work with technology. If you start a little bit more working in South America and Latin America with technology, maybe the drug economy, right? The drug economy, the horrible economic plights reduce. And I'm not saying outsource, grow in the United States. We'll solve that issue by making the United States the most competitive, the most business-friendly place in the world. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that that Mexico's economy has to suffer. You realize America's economy can grow, Mexico's economy can grow. America's economy can just grow at a greater height, at a greater level than Mexico's or any global economy. I mean, it's not unfathomable to think of it like that. Again, and this is my issue. The motivation to get a college education, to get a 60, 70, 80, maybe even a $100,000 per year annual salary type of job. At least if they were not economic disruptors, I could understand a pathway to citizenship. And I'm not thinking of this as, oh my God, I hate Mexicans. No. My parents are immigrants. The thing is, my dad works for a Fortune 500 company, and that's all the credit to him. The point I'm trying to make here is this. The concept, okay, the concept of, look, I'm not going to produce anything very valuable in the long term. Let's look at this. Most of the jobs that illegal immigrants are performing, and this is from a Democrat perspective, can be replaced by automation. So you have replaceable work either by Americans or by automation. And you are costing me money to live here. If you are a replaceable person, you shouldn't be here, and you are costing me stuff. Simple economic perspective. Why would I want you in my country? You've got to show me something that warrants me keeping you here. You've got to show me, look, I can get into an Ivy League school. I can get into a really good school, 4-year major, possible master's PhD. Boom. I get a job off the bat. I'm paying taxes. I'm giving more to the government than I'm taking, in the sense of I'm paying more in taxes than I'm receiving welfare. If any welfare at all. This, okay, is my major argument. It's not a humane thing. And I'd just like to point out that the reason why there are detention centers in regards to the separation of immigrant families is because of gangs and human trafficking and sex slaves and child labor in Mexico, transporting them to the United States. The reason the kids are separated is because there is reasonable doubt that the parent, air quotes, isn't even the legal guardian of the poor kid. Actually, look, in practice, it's not a humane thing. We should stop the practice because it's widespread the lack of humanity of it is widespread. This is a bipartisan thing. This isn't even a Democrat. Republicans don't believe this. Republicans believe this. Democrats believe this. The President of the United States believes this. But the reason that this was instituted was actually in compassion for the kids. What if the kid is being forcibly taken by some adult that he or she has no relation to, that they're being taken so that they can claim money and then come back to Mexico and live like kings? What about if they want to involve the kid, God forbid this, in some type of child prostitution thing? God forbid it. But it was a very the reason behind the program was actually a very compassionate reason. There was compassion involved in the justification behind the program being instituted in the first place. So let's be 100% honest. Let's be 100% accurate about the entire thing here. And in regards to trade, one of the things that hurts Mexico, the devaluation of its currency, doesn't make technology as valuable, right? So they don't have to pay the workers fair wages. Alright, and I've always said this, the US dollar is the most stable currency in the entire world. That is a fact. You don't have to do anything to the US dollar. But the fact that India, the fact that China, the fact that Mexico, they are so inconsistent with their currency. Not only do they dominate us on trade, they can't even properly grow their own economies because of the devaluation of their products. So it makes the more valuable products take a hit. It takes a hit to the workers. So I believe that the WTO, exempting the United States, should create a global currency backed by a fixed value, precious metal, that has a fixed value, in order to create parity, to take away some of the major trade abuses when it comes to low-profile goods. And it helps grow the global economy into this kind of technological 21st century type of deal. This is how... There's so many issues in regards to this, but there are ways to help Mexico become a better country, families stay united, Americans to get better opportunities without sacrificing the quality of life or the standard of life of any party involved. There are ways to do this in a humane, sensible way, and it is the common sense way to solve it. You know, And this is why outrage is one of the stupidest things. We don't have to get outraged about this. Problems, some have simple solutions. Some have solutions that are simple on its face but are more complex. But they all have solutions that can be drawn out, that can be written, that can be verbalized, that can be put into law. And that, my friends, is why outrage is one of those things that has always annoyed me. This is the Ashish Sports and Political Podcast, coming to you live from Hilliard, Ohio. Up next, we've got Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, LeBron James, LA, Boston, San Antonio, Cleveland, markets, players, cities, teams. Man, the NBA offseason is fun. And we're not even close to the apex yet. This is the Ashish Sports and Political Podcast, coming to you live from Hilliard, Ohio. All of this and more coming up next, segment number 2. See you then.